Hey, what is up, everyone? We are live again. Just give me a thumbs up or say something if you can hear me okay in the live chat. And also, while we are getting everyone ready, just want to get my compliance stuff out of the way. No, this video is not financial advice or recommendation to do anything. It's just general information for entertainment purposes. Now, usually with my live streams, what I want to do is I'm going to spend about, say, 10 to about 15 minutes to talk about the things I want to talk about today. So that's Airtasker, and also how I transition careers from corporate to growth marketing, which is, you can also call it digital marketing if you want. But I'll clarify the difference down the track. If you can hear me okay, just give me a thumbs up or gently smash the like button. Either will do. So let me share screen with you guys. Okay. Tell me if you guys can see this okay. And today, so the first thing I wanted to cover is I want to talk about Airtasker first. And before I say anything, I think it's really important to give credit where credit is due. And Airtasker has been one of the treasures, at least in my opinion, for Australian startups. It's already borderline impossible to create a company, and to take a company to go public, that's like double the impossibility, right? And it's just been amazing to see that Tim has been able to kind of take the idea from a very small startup to go public, and then recently, with the smashing kind of acceptance with the public, entering into Airtasker, it's just been really, really good to see. And they've been creating a lot of jobs. So I don't want to take that away from them. I think it's really important to acknowledge that they have done so much for Australia, and I think it's important to acknowledge that, right? But I do want to point out a few things that if you have been paying attention to the Airtasker story, they've been really hot ever since they IPO'd. So the IPO offer price for institutional investors was about 65 cents. And then when they went public at 11 o'clock, it immediately popped to $1. And then it went all the way up to like almost, actually, yeah, I think it sustained around this level. It went up to about $1.70, $1.80. I thought it was going to go to $2 before people kind of started to take some profits. But it's just been really, really interesting to see. I'm not going to comment too much on the decline because with most IPOs, they kind of it's a massive roller coaster ride in the beginning anyway. So not too fussed on that. I did make a note that as Airtasker went public, there was so much discussion, especially I remember reading some commentary from fund managers saying that there's a lot of opportunity for them, how they could be a gem, and also they could expand into the US. The comment around US, I have a divergent opinion, because I think that US, if you watch my Airtasker video, I'll leave in the link somewhere below. I actually said that for Airtasker, they've included the TAM, the total addressable market in the US, in their prospectus. And I think that because the market is dominated by venture capitalist funded startups that does exactly the same thing as Airtasker, like for example, Thumbtack, and they've gotten a lot of funding on that. I think that entering into the US will be a very tall task. The go-to-market spend on that will be incredibly expensive, and you still might not get any good results from that, right? So that's something to pay attention to. I don't think it's, they can just kind of walk into the US and dominate one of the, and kind of put up, give the competitors in the US a good run for their money. I think it will be much harder than that. But let's not take that away from, the success Airtasker already had. So that's important. But what I did, what I did kind of pay attention to is, so this is SEMRush. It's just a tool that I use for general organic traffic analysis. So I like to look at, how are, web-based startups or companies building their web pages, or how's their organic traffic flowing. And it seems like, they've mobilizing in the US already, even though they've, spent a lot of money in the UK, which I still have questions around, what happened to that money that they raised in 2018 for the UK launch. I still have questions around that. But it seems like they have mobilized quite a bit in the US market. And I dug a little deeper to see, what have they been ranking when it comes to Google SEO. And I dug pretty well, I didn't dig that deep, but it was pretty interesting that they were starting to. Tell me if you can't see it. Maybe it's a bit too hard to see. So let me so basically what I was trying to say is that I use SEMRush to gauge where Airtasker is at when it comes to their organic traffic. And it seems like they're already mobilizing in the US, which is interesting to see. And when I dig deeper in terms of what keywords are they potentially ranking for in the US for Google, it seems like they are ranking for a lot of blogs, and blogs can function. You can actually rank blogs across the world, and you can get traffic from that, right? But what's more important is these pages right here, where so if you look at Airtasker's domains, it'll be airtasker.com/US. So that would be more of a US specific page for that. And if we dig deeper and filter out for just these URLs, it seems like they are potentially going for auto, electrician, motorcycle. So what I was trying to say before I got cut out is that I think that it's an extremely expensive exercise for Airtasker to go into the US and potentially win against Thumbtack, because they have such a dominant position there. Not to mention TaskRabbit is also over there as well. But in saying that, it doesn't mean that Airtasker can't win, but it just means that they might have to choose specific niches that they can win. And it seems like motorcycle mechanic could be one of those categories that they're potentially going for. So that's really interesting. And I would just expect, I was just expecting that, because they raised money in 2018 to go into the UK, I thought UK would be more of a dominant target, but it seems like US is partially potentially also on the map for them. So I'll be really interested to see how they go up against bigger competitors, more well-funded competitors like Thumbtack and also TaskRabbit, both in the US and UK. Okay, so that's that. And I mean, I looked into Thumbtack as well in terms of what they're going for, but Thumbtack is basically going after everything. So it's not really that exciting to talk about. But there might be an opportunity for Airtasker to win in the mechanic side of things. Without making this too boring, that's basically all I had to say when it comes to Airtasker. I might take a few questions here for a second, and then I'll talk about transitioning careers. But I think the final comment I had to say when it comes to Airtasker is that with IPOs, the price is going to fluctuate. It's going to be all over the place. But fundamentally speaking, I always like to ask myself, is this a business, that will be amazing down the track? So that's an important question to ask. And let me answer a few questions. So there's some questions around Calga. So I'll probably answer that after transitioning careers. And then there was how much do I pay for SEMRush? So I don't remember, but it's about, because I use this for work, so I pay about 100 US per month for that. But I'll leave a link where there's a free trial for that. So if you're interested in just playing around with it, just use a free trial and you don't have to pay for it. What do you do PNV? I don't understand what PNV stands for, so maybe you can clarify for me. Okay, so I want to quickly talk about transitioning careers, because that was a question that was asked in previous streams. And I want to quickly explain, how my career have eventually evolved, right? Like every Asian, we were brought up that, hey, what options do we have when we were growing up? It was either banker, doctor, engineers. It really is that cliche, at least for me. But the good thing is, well, my dad was an entrepreneur, but my mom was a banker, and she wanted me to be a banker. And that story was pretty sad, actually, in my opinion. So when I'll give you the quick spiel, right? So I won't waste your time. So before I graduated uni, I was pretty secured. I had graduate role. I did my summer internship. I was already part-timing in one of the corporates. And what ended up happening is I thought to myself, if I can always come back, and do the corporate thing if I really wanted to. But while I was young, I wanted to make some mistakes. I wanted to go learn, go see the world, et cetera, et cetera. And then, after so I basically told my dad that, hey, I quit my job because I realized that the one thing I can never escape from for the rest of my life is sales. So I went to do B2B sales instead. Crazy, stupid, I know, whatever. But anyway, my dad told my mom, and then he basically snitched on me. But I still love my dad. And my mom basically called me and said it was the biggest mistake of my life to leave corporate. And didn't talk to me for a while. So that was rough. Anyway, regardless, I went to B2B sales because I realized that I need to learn how to sell, and that's really important. But what I realized over time is that I spent about 9 months like cold calling people, etc., because that was the environment we're in, and I wasn't good at it. And I'm not sure if it's because I wasn't good at it, because the way of selling is completely wrong. But what was really interesting is that I realized I start to pick up things on what to do and what not to do when it comes to selling. And then what ended up happening after that is that I spent 9 months here, and then I realized that, okay, I really need to do something else, because I was just not good at this, right? And what I ended up doing is I actually did a marketing course, and during the marketing course, I basically learned a lot. I took all of the learnings I did. I went to a startup weekend, and in 52 hours, I think 50-ish hours, we built a startup, and I leveraged everything I knew, and then we ended up winning the startup weekend. So that was a very, very interesting experience for me. And it also validated that, hey, I actually really enjoy this whole digital marketing field, right? And what ended up happening is that the place where I did the course offered me a job. Because I shared my entire journey. They realized where I was coming from, and then and what ended up happening is that I started in sales for that VC funded startup. And then what ended up happening after that is I knew, so I had the option. So eventually I got really good at sales, and I realized that what I was doing in the previous company was just possibly the wrong way of selling. And then when I went to the VC funded startup, I realized how to sell. And honestly, it's not that hard. And what ended up happening is that I realized I want to go down the digital marketing field. And I spoke to our head of growth, and I started to take things off his plate. I offered to do it. And, over time, I got really good at a few things. I kept improving on it. I met people, and I just kept going. And then eventually I took over a lot of the task for our head of growth. And then I was offered an option where, in the VC funded startup, we were, I joined at the C stage, and then I basically was with them for 2 rounds, Series A and B. For those of you who don't understand how VC backed startup works, essentially how it works is that for a given company, you go through different rounds to raise money, and raising money is not, it's not like it's just a milestone. It doesn't mean anything, right? It doesn't mean that the company is making money. But what I was trying to get at is that I did a course. I got offered a job as a sales role, and then I knew I wanted to move into digital marketing or growth marketing. And then I started to take things off our head of growth plate, and eventually I took such a big part of that plate, of his plate. He realized that I was being very, very serious when it comes to wanting to move into the field. And then I was given, and because I was I was in sales at the time for the company, where I ended up, I was offered either to go down the head of sales job title, or I could not take that job title and head into more of a growth lead job title. And I knew that if I was being pigeonholed into head of sales, then I wouldn't be able to kind of do the digital marketing stuff that I really enjoy. So I ended up declining the head of sales position, and then kind of just went down the growth lead route. And then next thing I knew, I was with them for the C stage. I became a growth lead in Series A, and then I was with them for 2 rounds. So for Series A, we raised 2.25 million, and for Series B, we raised $3 million. So what I've learned from the whole startup, and moving into growth marketing, is that compared these two, like corporate and VC startups, are just so different. Like corporate is, you're very sheltered. The work that you've done, it gets checked like 3 times. And just to make sure there's no mistakes. But at the same time, they do have a brand that they need to keep up to. Making mistakes is not there's no room for error, right? But for startups, you're making decisions left, right, and center, and a lot of decisions that you make, you actually get to follow through, and you see how things blossom. And this was the toughest time, and I would not trade that for anything. So in terms of how I transitioned into the marketing field, a few people asked, and generally speaking, I follow this model quite a bit. First, you need to educate yourself, and to educate yourself, you don't really need to pay to do a course, but it is really important that you show that you're serious. So there's plenty of courses and certifications that you can get with Google. These don't mean anything in the sense that, in reality, when you start practicing, you realize that, there are better things to do. There are better ways to do certain things, right? But it's important in the sense that if you get the certification, people know that you're serious, right? And then same with HubSpot, there's a lot of content over here as well. And if you want to learn SEO, like Moz is my go-to, right? You can learn a lot about marketing super quickly. So for those of you who really want to add that digital layer to your skill set, I generally go in the approach of, I personally really value SEO now because I started off as I started off managing like Facebook ads, in the beginning. And yes, that is good, but I realized the power of organic traffic really comes down to SEO, right? So SEO is important. And then, with Google, you just want to learn basically the search, not the display stuff. Ad measurement, video, definitely, shopping and apps. These are all really important except for display. Display is like the last thing you should learn. But other than that, it's really about just meeting, educating yourself in that particular field that you want to move into. Definitely build something and apply those learning as quickly as you can, and then iterate on them, improve on them as quickly as you can. And then you go meet people, show them what you've done. And then eventually you realize that a lot of the jobs, the good ones, are not advertised. They're constantly hunting. The good startups, a lot of times, a lot of good jobs, they're just not advertised. So you need to go meet people and then show them what they've done, and eventually, someone's going to be like, "Hey, you want to, take a chance, and come work for us." And that's exactly what happened to me. I know I took a little longer to explain my journey, but really, I went from a traditional corporate route to B2B sales and then to startups. So that's been my own journey so far. And that's kind of how I transitioned careers. And I was pretty fortunate, but it did take me a while. So I'm going to answer a few more questions in live chat. So if you guys have more questions, make sure you just drop it in the live chat section. So let me answer the Talga question first. So let me just quickly go back to the screen. So Talga did drop about 10% today. And if you go to the ASX.com, you should be able to read the announcement recently. So the DFS, the definitive feasibility study was delayed by, I think, until June, so a couple months. But the reasoning was travel restrictions, so on and so forth. As you know, like the investors are pretty knee-jerky. They have knee-jerk reaction nowadays. So am I surprised? No, I'm not surprised. Am I, what I think about this whole situation? I don't think too much about it because, it's not like the mind have moved or, the amount of resources inside, Talga's prospects have completely changed. So it's a little irrational in my opinion, but, it is what it is. So you can't really dictate, you can't really tell what's going to happen with people's share prices. But, it seems like the market didn't like that, but it didn't bother me. So, if I was to add a little bit more into the position, I'll definitely let you guys know. But in my opinion, it's a little bit irrational. Like, I mean, what do you expect from them? Like, you can't travel. Like, do you expect them to, what can they do? So that's all I'll say about that. So let me see. So VF asks, does Airtasker have taskers for hiring the? I don't know. That's just stuff up my mind. You should post that task in Airtasker. Hey Simon, hey mate, would love to hear your thoughts on Tau. Oh, okay. So I just answered that. 3-month delay seems big. Does that align for the possible joint venture announcement in June? Yeah, it does seem a little big, but I'm not too fussed about that. It's not like, it's more like travel restrictions at the moment. I don't know. Is there anything they can do? Like, that just seems a little bit irrational to me when it comes to the position, like the decline, that is. How long did it take you to learn digital marketing, and subsequently, how did you go find clients? So funny enough, I actually didn't have clients for 2 years because I'm not very good at multitasking. So when I was in the startup, when I was the growth lead, that's all I did. And because I was so committed, that's one of the reasons how I could rise the rank so quickly. You have to go all in with some of these things. And for me, I get calls at like, I remember getting a call at like 12:30, 1 p.m. Oh, sorry, not 1 p.m., like 12:30 a.m. at night from our co-founders saying that our investors want these reports, so on and so forth. And that's your job, to deliver. And so in terms of just answering your question, how long did it take? So it took me, so the course I did was about 10 weeks part-time. And by the time I was done, I had all like majority of the Google Ads, certification. I've done the startup weekends. And so for me, it took about 10 weeks essentially to transition. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question. But in terms of finding clients, I didn't find clients only after my startup experience. And by then, it was actually a lot easier for me to go find clients to pay me, just because they know what I've done for the company I was at. And I didn't have to do a lot of convincing. Like I just showed. I didn't have to, I didn't have to tell them. So that was a little easier on my front. What do I think about DTR? What's DTR? So someone let me know in the chat. I don't know what DTR is. Hey, Peter. Oh, thank you. Thanks, Peter. I appreciate it. What do I think about A2M and the share price approaching $8? So I haven't been following the A2M story that closely, but I do know that they have, the drama stuff aside, I do know that, they have a new CEO, and it is on my watch list, but I personally want to know what is the growth strategy for A2M, especially coming from the new CEO. And I think I can form a better observation after he has said how he plans to kind of, grow A2M again. For now, that's the extent that I know when it comes to, A2 milk. But they are approaching $8, and yeah, like I think I have other things that I'm watching, and A2M is kind of lower on my priority list at the moment. Yeah. By the way, for those of you just joined, if you have more questions, let me know in the live chat section, just so that I can address them. And I'll go for another 15 minutes because it seems like that there are more questions coming. So yeah, so if you guys have any questions, make sure you let me know. And then there was a question around Polynovo. So I think the question was around, okay, what do I think about Polynovo? So I don't know too much about it. Sorry. So I can't make, comments on that. I think with a lot of these speculative positions, as you know, our environment doesn't really encourage, these growth companies to appreciate in share price. So I'm a lot more careful nowadays in terms of where I'm allocating my capital. And this is one of the reasons why I said, given the current environment and the rising bond yields, I do think that Airtasker, there will be a downward pressure to Airtasker's share price because they're not making money. So yes, the hype is there's a level of frothiness, but eventually short term it's a popularity contest, and long term is a weighing machine. So you got to give them time to execute, right? So Lonnie asks, would you ever go back to corporate? What's the biggest difference? So would I ever consider going back to corporate? I actually thought about this a few times, especially if you guys watch my side hustles video, I talked about a few times where I really wanted to give up on YouTube. And it's so true because, as a content creator, sometimes you just feel really sad, either because of potential just spending a lot of time by yourself. So I did think about it. And I think the only reason for me to go back would be like if I have no other interest that I want to pursue, I probably would not consider going back unless it's a really good startup opportunity. I actually did get offer. I don't think I can talk about it. So yeah, so I did get offers, but I turned them down. What is the biggest difference between you personally working for yourself? So when you work for yourself, you have to be a lot more disciplined with managing your own mental health, your productivity. And for corporate, I felt I work a lot harder in startups instead of corporate, because I felt like it was a piece of me and a piece of business that I owned, because I also had option in the company that I was working at. So personally speaking, I feel like corporate, you're just very sheltered, unless you're in like things like consulting or investment banking, where you're like just drilled and there's that kind of expectation of performance. But if it's not like those things, then I would much prefer startups. But generally speaking, when you work for yourself, you just have to look after everything, like taxes, finding clients, managing your own productivity, and then you have to be your best motivator as well, because when things don't go your way, there is no one that can pull yourself up except for yourself. So that's important. Looking to transition from a qualifier, doing online marketing, would you maybe touch the best place to start? Best place to start is I actually just mentioned it. So I think some of the content that is really good, in my opinion, is some of the certifications for these things is pretty good. YouTube is actually a really good place to learn as well. So and also HubSpot has so much content when it comes to different marketing stuff, but don't go like too crazy with stuff like this. Focus on potentially learning about SEO and things like that, and then start building a project. I think the most important thing, especially when it comes to employment, is that you want to show, you don't want to tell. So if I had to start again, I'll probably go down the SEO route. Some people might disagree, but I am a very big SEO evangelist right now. Shout out to Kenjo. If you guys, Kenjo is an OG content creator. So if you guys have not subscribed to Kenjo, you should, because he's way more level-headed than I am. So that's important. Do you think I'll ever go down the fund management route? Probably not. I don't think I am a good analyst. I think there's too many restrictions. I wouldn't be able to talk to you guys at all, and have that connection. I don't know. That's not exciting to me. I think what's more exciting is potentially building a product in the future where a lot of people would use and find value in. I find that a lot more productive for my time. I think, yeah, that's my opinion. But shout out to Kendra. Hi David, which sector do you think will outperform the market this year? I feel like we're already seeing glimpses of it, where the traditional cyclical stuff like oil. I talk a lot about how I'm pro renewables and not very pro oil, and I think that a lot of people think similar wavelength, and because of that, I think it gives a lot of opportunity for these fossil fuel companies to outperform. But do I want to be part of that? No, I don't. I actually have a video coming up on renewable energy ETFs, and I just think that I think as cyclical stuff, definitely. I think growth will probably get smashed at least for another 3 months. But it's hard to tell when it comes to these things. It's not up to us. It's really more up to the fund managers and pension funds and how they rotate money in and out of different places. So do not know what's happening with the Novonic share price. So no update on that. How do you have enough time to balance a full-time career and YouTube? Your insights are very descriptive. Yes. So right now, my the time I spend on YouTube is basically 80% of my time now, and that gives me kind of that freedom to spend more time researching things. But when I first started, especially some of the bank videos that I did, etc., I didn't sleep a lot. That was the trade-off. That I figured that in order to build a real connection with all of you and also give you something that's actually valuable and unique insights, you just got to give up something. And for me that was sleep. So a lot of coffee, didn't sleep much. And if you actually watch the I think it was the stocks that I will hold for the rest of my life. No one has actually commented on that, but if you look at the beginning, I didn't sleep a lot. So that's something to pay attention to. But yeah, you got to give up something, and balance is, yeah, there's no hiding. Like weekends is, yeah, you got to give that up. But that's, that's my choice, right? Do I think Zippo? Well, who knows? I think it really depends on your own thesis. I know that some people are very pro buy now pay later. Indifferent. Guys, keep the questions coming in live chat. I'll do another about 10 minutes. Let's see how we go. What was the most difficult thing you found going into marketing? Surprisingly, the finance background has actually helped with that transition, because in finance, we learn a lot about return on investment, how we allocate capital. So with digital stuff, there is that parallel with finance, because finance is all about risk-adjusted returns, how we allocate capital, et cetera, to drive efficiency. And with marketing, it's the same, except there's also a level of creativity, because how you allocate capital, the efficiency to that channel, like for example, Facebook ads or Google ads, it's dependent on the creative, right? As in, like what video are you doing, what copy are you doing? So it's a lot more creative in that sense, and which is something that I really loved. With finance, I felt I was a little handcuffed. That it's just numbers. Well, it's not just numbers, but different people tell you different things. But what I found really interesting about the whole marketing thing is just I am able to express myself in a completely different way, and I still get to do a lot of the allocation, of capital, work, because I get given a budget. It's my job to basically allocate the budget into different channels, and whichever that will, drive the most returns for us. And that was part of my job, right? So, but I think the most difficult thing is just, it's not what you think. It's managing expectation. Managing expectation was the hardest thing about my job, because especially when you're in a VC funded startup, even after you 6x the revenue, it's just not good enough. You're expected to 10x. So I remember we went from 60K to 400 Gs a month. And that was still like, okay, that's great, but how do you 10x? So I think the more important thing is managing expectations upwards with the investors and also sideways with everyone else. Because in most startups, people are pretty stressed that there's not enough resources ever. So you kind of have to babysit a lot of different people across you. And you also have to babysit a lot of people above you, just so that my co-founders don't tell the investors the wrong thing. And then they come back and embarrassed. And then I have to, tell them the truth, etc. So that's important. So thoughts. Actually, I'm going to talk about Lit ETF. So I'm going to save that for that. I have a 9-to-5 job. I want to make money on the side. I'm interested in providing a service. What can I learn? I'm not interested in making YouTube videos. I think when it comes to providing a service, I think the first thing you want to ask yourself is, what are you potentially interested in? Because when it comes to education, learning and applying really comes down to your own interests. Some people really enjoy coding, and I'm trying to add that to my toolkit, but YouTube is taking a lot of time at the moment, so I'm unable to do that. So, I think there's a couple routes that you can think about. Potentially think about design, UX design, even graphics design. That could be a really good way of generating some kind of revenue on the side. Obviously, I went down the digital marketing route, so that was cool for me. Shout out to Juan. I think man, you're amazing. Thank you. And coding engineering could be another route to go as well. So it's really up to you. And then once you get really good at it, you just need to start building things. And then I think eventually getting clients will be easier if you're able to show, not tell. So that's really important. Or you could write content. Medium is a really good place to potentially write content and be monetized for it. And that's a really good way of monetizing. Substack is another really good example. Let me just quickly show you guys. So Medium is a place where you can write articles, and the network will, reward you So I did try Medium a few times. So if you guys wanted me to talk a little bit about it, and I also talked about how I got my first 1,000 subs here as well. So that's something for you guys to enjoy. Substack is basically a newsletter service where you can write newsletters and people can potentially pay you for it. So that could be another way to generate some side hustle income without having to go learn a brand new skill, right? But those are the options that that you have to take some initiative on that, right? Been enjoying a video on live stream. What made you go down to sharing the personal? No, I'm not with that startup anymore. I left the company in towards the end of 2018. We just had some divergence into in personal opinions, and I think I was so burnt out at that point. I needed to step back because when you're working in a startup, you're working 9 to 5 doesn't exist. That's not a thing. Like if you want to be really good at your job, it's kind of 7 days, and the hours are up to you. Like the more you spend on something, the better you get. I don't really think about as work at that point. So yeah, no, I'm not with that startup anymore. What made me go down the journey of sharing personal finance? I think for me, there's a lot of value to share my personal finance journey, only because I would like people to know that whatever I'm doing there's no really magic source to it. The way I built my portfolio is, in the beginning, is pretty straightforward. It's just the way I built it is mostly ETFs, and I think it's so crazy that we still think saving money is a really good way to build wealth. So I wanted to share all my ups and downs just so that people can see that whatever I'm doing, there's no magic to it. Anyone can, be financially independent, hopefully, even without having to need to reach 65. And I think relying on superannuation is another. Yeah, I don't want to be reliant on anything. I want to make sure that, hey, by the time I'm 35, getting closer to 40, finance should not be a problem for me. That's my first goal. I think I have a lot more value that I can give to the world, down the track. But the first step is I need to solve this money problem. Yeah, and shout out to the channel Solving the Money Problem, because he's on Australian as well. But yeah, so it's just important to me that I document everything so you guys can see all of the ups and downs and so on and so forth. Are you closer to Nuix? No, I've done a video on it. That's about it. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, when it comes to making decisions, I'm very sensitive to my own research. So I do a lot of research, and then when the price fluctuate, it is what it is. So I'm not super fast. Yeah. So no, I'm not really close to Nuix. Hey, David, love the content. Just curious. On CSL, no thoughts on that yet. Maybe I'll make an update on CSL down the track, but I did make a video on CSL in the last year. So if you're interested in that, make sure you check out that video. There's some questions about Novonics as well. Well, can't really answer some of the questions because, can't give financial advice, so it's important. Who do you see as Talga's main competitors? Is there a real threat? Well, I think for me, part of Talga's competitive advantage is very much the positioning in Sweden, and also the material, because the whole thesis, at least my thesis for Talga, is that European, so the EU is the second fastest growing EV market besides China, and ever since the pandemic last year, everyone have realized that, hey, we no longer can rely on importing materials from Asia, right? Because they come with such a heavy carbon footprint. So just to answer the first part first, I think I need to think a little bit more in terms of who might be Talga's main competitors, because they're in graphite. There's a lot more lithium. Well, they're not competitors because like lithium and graphite are completely different things. So there are some lithium projects in Europe. So I'm going to kind of skip the first question. Is there any real threat to the success in European supply chain? Unless there is a bigger mine than Talga, I find that threat is probably not the right word. I think the growth is so explosive when it comes to European battery supply chain. It's just the permitting process. How long is it going to take before they can start producing materials? Because the longer the process takes, the more that Northvolt, like companies like Northvolt with battery factories, is going to import the materials. So I think of what's preventing Talga from doing better is permitting and also how fast can get that factory up. But they already kind of talked about that in their timelines, so I won't talk too much about that. Do I think 3 to 4 years will still grow at a rate for newly graduates to find a job easily? I think finding a job easily is very subjective, because some people are having trouble finding jobs is because maybe they're not putting themselves out there enough. Yeah, so I think 3 to 4 years later, it's hard to say in terms of like how that will evolve. But I remember in uni, because my degree is in commerce and finance, marketing was taught at a very theoretical level. Like you're almost trained to become a CMO, but then that's not helpful. Like when you get out to the workforce, you're not going to become, you're not going to write the strategy. You're expected to execute. That's why graduates are cost centers for a lot of bigger companies, because if you realize that even for the guys who go into banks and stuff, they get retrained, like in a very short amount of time. So I think for me, I think whether finding a job is not the right question. It's what will add more value to society in 3 to 4 years. And I think, engineering is important, like both, mechanical and also on the software side, especially with with how we're progressing when it comes to artificial intelligence. I think that field is super important. Another field that I think is super important is material science. So kind of going on to the tangent of batteries, et cetera, et cetera. People are very falling in love with the idea of, software. Maybe we need more people working on materials for batteries. That's important as well, right? Shout out to Michael. Michael's like, how do you balance YouTube and work? So when I first started YouTube, I just slept less, if that makes sense. Yeah, there's no getting around that. Like, on the weekends, I might have a couple of hours off to spend it with the girlfriend, etc. But I think if it's important to you enough, you will spend a lot of time just doing and thinking about things. So I don't really think of it as a balance. I think of it as, if that's my goal, what do I need to give up in order to get to my goal? So I went out less, I spent less money. I just optimized for how do I get there instead. So not really a balance for me, but I do realize that some people have families, so you have to work around that, etc. So I think my observations are kind of unfair. I don't have a good answer to that. I just slept less, to be honest. If I could go back 5 years, so I was actually asked this question in the past, and I would not change a thing, to be honest. Because if you change anything, even if you were to give yourself advice, that changes the time continuum, and then things might turn out a little differently. But if I had to just like tell myself a message, if I were to go back 5 years, I think the thing I'll probably tell myself is everything will be okay. Be patient, because I realized that back then I was just so in a rush to try and make everything happen, and never took time to appreciate things. And there's that whole kind of crash and like sprint and then burnout, and then sprint and then burnout. Like, I will probably just tell myself, just keep going. Things will turn out to be just fine. What's my day job? My day job, well, most of the time is spent on YouTube now. So, and then besides that, I have one client that I consult with, and I think one client is enough so that I can still sleep. So that was good. Shout out to the adventurous investor. Thank you. I appreciate you as well. Thanks, I appreciate it. I think that's all the question we had. If you guys have any more questions, I will do like maybe a few more minutes. But shout out to Michael, shout out to a lot of the content creators in the investing space. I think at the end of the day, it's important we give them respect, because doing content is actually really hard, and the fact that they're putting themselves out there is it's amazing. So also, forgot to ask you guys, if there's anything you'd like me to cover in the next live stream, also let me know in the live chat section below as well, just so that I could prepare material for next week. But as usual, I know if you guys are like, hey, we need to see auto, etc. before you bounce. But I think there's one more question I might answer before I go. Why our ASX is very slow to recovery compared to, well, mainly, the thing you do need to know is S&P 500, a lot of growth companies. So when the pandemic happened last year, they were the first to recover, and a lot of the at-home stocks did really well. And if you think about our companies in the ASX, it's not growth stocks. It's banks, industrials, and they Flight Center, Webjet. Like they got hammered, and that's one of the reasons why we recover pretty slowly. But other than that, like it's just different compositions, right? So yeah, hopefully that answers your question. There's a few more, but I'll try and answer them next time. And as usual, Auto will always do the honors, and I'm gonna see you guys very, very soon.